Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Welcome, Cindy Baker, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Today we're going to be talking about your work, productivity coach, and I'm going to be so interested in this conversation because I'm interested in the current state of our productivity as people, because I think what is happening in the world is that so many people are giving themselves busy work and they're doing so many different things, but are those things truly meaningful for themselves, for whether it be for their passions in life or their profits in business? So we're going to be diving into that in just a short minute. But if you could, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help people?
Yeah. So I'm Cindy Baker, and I am a former middle school counselor and teacher.
Bless your heart.
And I know. So a little crazy, but I've been a coach for about 5 years. I have a master's in counseling myself, and I have ADHD and have learned to be successful working with the way my brain is wired. And so I enjoy empowering other professionals to kind of overcome that overwhelm, learn to manage their time, their energy, and their focus so they can reach their goals, grow their businesses, all that without burnout. And I have a group coaching program, and I do workshops and master classes and things like that. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and we're going to get into all that in just a minute. One of the things I wanted to start off the conversation is the art of being productive. When we have to define what is productive in our world today, what would you define being productive as?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because there's a difference between being busy and being productive. When I think of being productive, I think of high impact tasks, things that really move the needle in your business, if you're an entrepreneur like me, or just in your personal life, reaching your goals. And so if something is just filling time and it's maybe easy to do, it's the low-hanging fruit on your list, then that's not necessarily productive. But productive is moving you forward, doing something that has a big impact.
Well, how would we understand something has a big impact versus not a big, like a big impact? For example, someone might say, I need some R&R, and we can call it a self-help day or self-love day, where they take the whole day to watch Netflix because they think they need it, because it's going to have the highest impact on their own personal happiness. So looking at it in that regard, is high impact just doing what we feel is appropriate, or is it something more than that?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that. And it's not always what we feel like doing or don't do. And if we live our life making choices based on emotions, then we probably are going to be disappointed, because we all kind of have this drive inside of us to be successful. And everybody defines that a different way. But art is important, but I think sometimes we use things like that as an excuse to not do the hard things. And a lot of times the hard things are what is going to bring us closer to our goals. And so one of the things that I work with people on is kind of getting over that overwhelm that they feel when they look at a big thing and it's an important thing and they know it's important and they want to do it, but they don't do it. And I help them get started, because getting started is half the battle. And one of the things we do is just break down the big things into small, tiny little doable steps. And sometimes your brain just resists something that's big and vague and maybe complicated, or it's going to take a long time, or maybe it's boring. If you have ADHD like me, we don't like to be bored. And so if you just have a small step, then your brain says, okay, it's like, you've lowered the resistance, and you think, well, I can do that. Instead of saying I've got to write a 40-page report, then you just say, well, I'm going to write the first sentence. Every big thing starts with just a laughably small, tiny step. And it's just a bunch of little tiny steps in sequence. And if we can look at things that way, then we can kind of reverse engineer and make milestones and then celebrate when those milestones are met. Hey, I wrote the first sentence. Yay. But sometimes we have to kind of trick our brain. to get started like that.
Yeah, very true. I like the idea of small steps lower the resistance. And one of the things I wanted to get into a discussion is going to be multifaceted. So I'm going to need your help with this.
Okay.
We can choose any either or first, and you have to pick one though. So we can pick either energy or focus. Which one do you want to be first?
They're both important. Let's do focus.
Just whichever one you want first. So focus is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so focus is going to be our first one. And I remember this quote, and I don't really know who says it, but I know Denzel is like probably the person who's maybe accredited the most with it. He says, do not mistake movement for progress. And a lot of people, they will do things and be so busy in our world today. We have our smartphones and they can give us all the emails that we need, and they can give us all of the information and all the news. And we are just overloaded with all of this stuff. And we have to have a level of focus when we are presented with all of this information, because maybe some of this information is going to be irrelevant to our own personal growth, or for the idea, or for the ideas or the things that are going to create the highest impact in our moment or our day. So when we start to look at that focus, how would a person start to apply more focus into their life or into their day, where they're doing the meaningful things and they're doing the more high impact things, and they're doing it in a manner that is steady rather than inconsistent?
Yeah. And I like the way you worded that. Sometimes movement is mistaken, just kind of like busyness, for productivity. One of the things that I teach my coaching clients is a 90-minute sprint method. And what that is, first of all, you pick your top 3 high impact tasks for the day. Like if you, and you might have heard this illustration before, but if you think of your day as a jar, and your tasks that you need to do are rocks, pebbles, and sand. The rocks are the high impact things that are going to really move the needle. And the pebbles are important, but they're not quite as urgent. And the sand is all the little stuff, meetings, social media, email. And what we end up doing so many times is we fill up the jar first with sand, and then we try to stuff the rocks in there, and they don't fit. And so take the top 3 things and then set a timer. Start with 25 minutes. And I like an actual kitchen timer, because you can visually see the passing of time. If you have ADHD like me, sometimes you lose track of time. And so you set a timer and you put off all distractions. And, I tell my clients, put your phone in the other room, because even if you turn it off, it's still tempting. And then you just give 100% of your attention to this one thing. And it could be a piece of a bigger project, but that one piece or that one task for 25 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, you take a 5-minute break. You can do whatever you want. You can scroll social media. You can look at puppy yoga videos, which is what I like to do. Because once you click that you like them, the algorithm is going to send you millions of them. But then you just do it again, and you do it for 2 or 3 times. And then you take maybe a 30-minute lunch break. You would be amazed at how much more productive you become. And if you take your top 3 tasks, no more than 3, and you do those first, then even if the whole rest of your day just goes haywire, you've still won, because you've done your most important things. And, that kind of leads us into energy, but I'll let you ask that question.
Right. Well, we are nowhere close to getting to energy. I'm going to let you right now. We need to talk about these pebbles and these rocks and this sand, because what sometimes happens in a conversation is, even though you or I might not know, or you or I will know what these rocks are, some audience won't. So they're going to ask this question internally. They're going to say, well, what are the rocks? What are the pebbles? You mentioned the sand could be the social media, but what are those rocks? What are those pebbles as an example? You can use any business as you want. So for example, someone starting a gym business and maybe saying, are there rocks and what are the pebbles? Maybe someone has a salon. What are their rocks and what are the pebbles? So you can use any example, but just to give some context, if you could.
Yeah. One of the tools that I have my coaching clients use is the Eisenhower matrix. And that's a way to prioritize things according to urgency and importance. So you want to think of all your tasks like in 4 quadrants. The things that are the most urgent, like they have a close deadline, and the most important. In other words, they're going to make or break your business. Those things take top priority. And then things that are important but not as urgent, you want to schedule those things. So they're not just things you try to hold in your memory because you'll forget, but they're things you schedule. And then things that are urgent but not as important, you can possibly delegate those or automate those. And things that are not important and not urgent, sometimes you just need to take them off the list, because what we end up doing is we reach for the low-hanging fruit, because we'll say, I'll get started after I check my email. I'm just going to check my email. And the next thing you know, 30 minutes later, you're researching the history of bubble wrap or something stupid, and before you know it, you've accomplished nothing except for learning that bubble wrap was originally designed as wallpaper. True story. But anyway, the rocks, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, 80% of your time needs to be spent on revenue producing activities. So if you're just shuffling papers around and, if you have an online business like me, if you're getting on Canva, which is a design website, and you're spending 45 minutes trying to pick the perfect color for one social media post, that is not a good use of your time, because in the long run, it's really not going to make you any money. But if you're picking up the phone and making calls, that's a better use of your time, or if you're making a video or something like that. So, if you have a brick and mortar business, then things that are sales and marketing, those things need to be priority, because if you don't do sales and marketing, you're not going to have a business, and it may be great that you made this perfect chart to show all of your employees' schedules and who's off when and all that kind of stuff. But somebody else could have done that and maybe even done it better and faster. And so you have to kind of take the best over the better sometimes, because there's a lot of good things that we can do, but you only have 24 hours in a day. So you do have to pick things that are going to move the business forward. And those are not always the easy things, and they're not always the things that you feel like doing, but they're the things that you have to do.
One of the things you talked about was delegation, and I believe that is critical when it comes to priming your focus to the things that you have to do. Because a lot of people will think, I have to do the social media posts, I have to do the Canva things, and rightfully so, they have to be done, but we can delegate them. And when it comes to an entrepreneur, especially someone starting off and they don't have a mentor or a guide, they typically try to juggle everything. They try to do everything, wear all the hats, and then they realize that maybe I can't do this, or they start to burn out and they are like, wow, like this is just too much, because they have to do what they're supposed to be doing. And it might not be as glamorous, like making the calls or to do the sales and the marketing. It might not be fun, right? To them, maybe creating that 45-minute Canva scheduling sheet is more fun for them. And they're like, okay, at least I did something. But again, the focus is not where it needs to be. So then we have this idea of delegation, where sometimes entrepreneurs, they get stuck with this idea of that someone may not be able to do it better than me. And of course, there is the possibility that they can. Think of it as maybe you have a secretary and you ask them to write an email, and then they write an email, and the email is nothing as how you would have liked them to write the email. So then now you're spending time out of your day saying, hey, this email was no good. So you're training them, and hopefully they kind of get it, as time goes on. But there's also those people saying, well, why bother me having to go through that process and when I could just do it really quickly? But then again, we take away some of that focus from our primary task, because if we spend 15 minutes doing an email here and there throughout our day, the focus of us doing whatever we are supposed to be doing is sidetracked, or we get distracted. And so I wanted to talk about the implications of losing focus on the little things that maybe we can do better than someone else.
Yeah. And I think part of that is perfectionism, and we have to let go of that. And that, I know that's difficult. I know it's difficult for me. At first, you do have to do everything, unless you've got a lot of startup money. when you first start a business, you are going to have to do more than you would do down the road. But as you start thinking about offloading some things and maybe hiring a virtual assistant or a part-time person to help, you want to maybe have them give you samples of their work so that you can kind of see, does this person match? And then once you do hire them, let's say they're writing emails for you, you want to show them your style and show them your emails. And you want to say, this is the tone that I want, this is the type of email that I'm used to sending out. And so you have to kind of put a little work in up front. But if you get to the point where it's 95% okay, you have to let go of that. That 5% really isn't going to matter. It probably only matters to you.
Right.
Nobody else is going to notice. So I think the rule of thumb is that you would want to keep things that only you can do. Maybe for me, only I can teach what I'm teaching. It has to be my content. If I'm promising to be the coach for a group, only I can lead that group, And there are other things that you don't have to do that could be done by somebody else. And, this doesn't just apply to your business, but if you're a business owner, even personal things can be delegated. You could pay someone to cut your grass and clean your house and things like that. And it doesn't cost as much as you think. And it doesn't have to be every week, but even if let's say you spend every Saturday morning cleaning your house, if you just had that 4 hours freed up and you spent that on your business, it can make a big difference, So you have to think about, what make a list, what all could only I do, and then what could somebody else do? And you're not going to be able to afford financially to hire out everything that you can't do, but you maybe pick the things from the list of things that you don't have to do. Which ones do you think you're not good at or you really, really dislike? Get rid of those first, and then eventually you can get rid of more. But that's kind of the rule of thumb. You want to keep the things that if your personality is the brand, you're the face of your company, then you have to maintain that yourself. You can't give that to somebody else.
I think of when I started the podcast years ago now, and in the beginning, oh man, I did everything. And eventually I hired a bunch of editors and then they were helping out. And I still was bottlenecking everything. And I was like, why am I bottlenecking this? And it was just because of, I'm trying to make sure that the product that I'm trying to put out or the podcast episodes that I'm trying to put out are really good. And I would say I didn't, really grasp this idea of allowing other people to, do the work. But it took some time for me to get really good at interviews and to ask the questions and to teach people, my style, my flow, and my expectations. All of those things I had to become familiar with before I can say, hey, I hope you can become familiar with those things so you could be successful. It took around episode 300. So it was about 300 crazy episodes. And then now it's just smooth sailing. It's like so simple. Mm-hmm. Now compared to what it was in the past. And I couldn't imagine ever going back to that mayhem and nonsense of what I was doing because, I've simplified so many different things because I was doing things that weren't a priority or doing things that didn't need my focus. And one of the things is scheduling. It's the most mundane, soulless task that you have to do in podcasting. It truly is. It's like you have to do show notes and all that's done for you, but just to schedule it. It seems like so simple, but it would cause so much angst in my life. And like cutting the grass, same thing. But it's like I don't want to do this. Yeah. So what was happening was I felt as those things were draining my energy, where I was thinking about these things that I had to do. And as soon as I thought about them, all the energy in my body was just like zapped away. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything now. So when I got rid of the things that I was like, I really don't want to do this, I'm just going to delegate it. I started to get more energy. I started to become more focused. And so, the focus can be just, doing the things that only you can do, but then also doing the things that you enjoy doing that you can only do. So anyone can schedule something. Anyone can put out a short or clip and go into Canva. I can't tell you the last time I was in Canva, but we have an account, because people do into Canva. But I understand why people are so involved in their business, because they want everything to work. But what happens is they get burned out and they lose focus and they lose the energy. And so the conversation, I would love to shift now more to the energy. And of course, we can still keep focus always in our rear view mirror and part of the conversation. But I believe energy is going to be one of the inhibitors for a person to either take action or to not take action. Because if something seems daunting or a lot of work, they're going to say, whoa, like this is a lot to take in. And so if they don't have the energy or the concept of prioritizing the things that should be done first, because let's say you had to clean your house, and this is far from business, but let's say you had to clean your house, and the most important room in your house is maybe your office, right? So now we're talking about business. So your office has to be clean because maybe you're doing virtual meetings and you don't want socks hanging from the chandelier or something, right? You should clean the office first. Some people might say, oh, I have to clean the bathroom first because that's how I've always done it. Then I clean my bedroom, and we are finally getting to the office and you ran out of juice. And so the thing that needed to be done first was done last, and maybe it wasn't done at all. So they wait until the next day or the next week until they get more energy. But what tends to happen is they do the same thing next week and the week after and the month and the year. And before you know it, they're like this is just not manageable. So sometimes just flipping how you do things can be a game changer and life changer. But what happens, I find, is that so many people have blind spots that they don't even see where their energy is being leached from. It could be from friends, it could be from relationships, whatever. And so the conversation now is the energy aspect. How do you help people focus their energy? Or how do you help people use their energy in the right manners or to get more energy if they don't have enough?
Energy is important. I think just being aware of when your energy is the highest and when it's the lowest is important. So I always tell people, track your energy for a week and notice when are you mentally more alert, when are you physically more awake, and when are you emotionally more up. Those three areas. Generally, people are morning people or they're evening people, and it is not that they can't do things other times of day, but you've got kind of a peak energy time. And if you can identify when that is, then you want to schedule those important things during your highest energy time. Because if you don't, if you waste, like I'm a morning person, but I mean, after coffee, so mentally, I'm probably more awake in the morning and I get sleepy in the afternoon. And so I want to do what we call deep work in the morning, things where I have to write or something like that, where I have to think. And you don't want to waste that time, piddling around on your desk, shuffling things around and scrolling on your phone and answering emails and, stalling, procrastinating. You want to just go ahead and set a timer to give you that urgency and just use your peak energy time for your most important tasks. Because if you don't, I've used the illustration before, it's like using a bulldozer to pull up weeds from your garden. I mean, it's just a mismatch. You don't want to take your highest energy time and check email, and then wait till you're tired to try to do something that requires concentration. So that's really important. And they go together, the focus and the tasks, prioritizing the tasks and the energy. So as you're thinking of your rocks and your pebbles and your sand, you also have to think about your energy cycles.
Yeah, I think of my phone in the morning when I wake up. It's just filled with notifications. And I'm like, yeah, it's clear all of them. I'll do them later. First thing I like to do in the morning is going to the gym. It's just habit. It's very similar to someone's drinking coffee. And I just go there, get my workout in. I'm just focused. And then when I get home, I'm ready. I'm just like, all right, office, do what I have to do. I have young kids, so sometimes they get in the way for a moment, but I don't mind giving them 20 minutes and then because I know I'm going to go right into the office and do what I have to do. But not everyone can do that. Some people, they sit on the sofa with their kid or they sit on the sofa with their partner, and before you know it, they're just watching a Netflix special, and like they don't know how they got there, but I can tell you how they got there. It's just that what they wanted to accomplish was not as important as they thought it was. Because sometimes you can give yourself this lofty goal of something you want to do. Think of how many people they say they want to lose weight or they want to run a marathon, and they have all these, great ideas, and it feels good. Like the endorphin rush feels good to want to try all these wonderful things and these new things in your life. But then something happens where you're just like, yeah, I'm just so busy with everything. And then I have to ask, like exactly what are you busy with? Oh yeah, like the other day, I had to take my dog to the vet. I understand, right? Sure enough, something else happened. Oh yeah, like that day is grocery shopping day. So it's like they have excuses for all of the reasons why they're not doing their high priority tasks or high energy tasks. It's almost like the procrastination has taken a new form in our world today of excuses. So they are not only procrastinating, they're finding excuses to not do the things that they're supposed to be doing. And so when we start to look at this aspect of the mind or someone, how can we help them to be more productive or to be more focused and to not simply take the easy road of not doing something because maybe they don't feel like it or something distracted them for a moment?
Yeah, you have to be intentional about how you spend your time, because if you don't plan your time, somebody else will. I mean, that's just the way it is. And as I've gotten older, I realize that time is not going to last forever. And when I kind of one day just caught myself being distracted, I realized that I wasn't just procrastinating. I was actually giving away my dreams minute by minute, and every little unplanned break, like scrolling on my phone. And as you think about it in that way, it becomes, and people quote me on that all the time, but it's true. You're actually giving away your desire to reach goals. And so when you think about it in that way, you think, well, gosh, I may only have X number of years left, and this is what I wanted to accomplish. Am I where I wanted to be at this point in my life? No. Why? Because I procrastinated, So if you think about it in that way, it causes you to be a little more intentional. And then I think if you put all these pieces together, and all these things that I'm sharing, I mean, strategies are great, but with my coaching, I've got support that people need to implement the strategies, because information is not enough. Courses are great, but how many times do you buy a course and it's sitting in your inbox? You never opened it, So all of these little pieces come together and they fit in a person's life. And then you have to have accountability. And if it's not a coaching program, you need to find somebody who can help support you as you try to make changes in your life. And you have to create new habits. You have to create new routines and structure. And, I work with a lot of people who have ADHD, and a lot of them, when you say structure, they just kind of bristle. Like, you're going to make me all controlled. I don't want that. But an ADHD brain really thrives on structure. And if you're the one creating the structure, you're still in control. You're not giving anybody control. You're just setting yourself up for success. And so creating structure, putting in, for instance, people with ADHD have working memory problems. So putting in external supports to, like sticky notes, things like that, to help offload things in your brain and put them where you can remember. You work out in the morning. I used to swim in the morning before school when I was a teacher. It was really early. It was a master swim class, and I had to put out all my stuff the night before. And I made my water bottle, everything, and put it almost where I would trip over it to get out the door to go to the restroom, just to make it harder for me to not do it. The path of least resistance is what we're going to do. So if you're creating structure and you're being intentional about your time, you got to make it easier for you to choose the right thing. And so whatever you got to do to kind of set yourself up for success, that's what you got to do. So hopefully that makes sense for some people listening.
Yeah, no, I thought you presented it extremely well. I think of when I first moved to Austin, and my gym at the time still is LA Fitness, but from where I lived, it was about 10 to 15 minutes to get to the LA Fitness that I was going to. And during moving, especially from state to state, and you're by yourself with a dog, it could be like, whoa, this is a lot of stuff. And then everything else you have to do, work, business, you're like, man, 10 to 15 minutes is everything. In the beginning, I said, like, I can't go. So for the first few months, I was just like focused on moving and everything I had to do. And then I was like, wait, I'm like, I need some more energy. And the best way I know to get energy is to eat well and go to the gym. So I was like, well, I need to, get back in line. And at the time, I had got a trainer and a coach because I knew I was giving myself this 10 to 15 minute drive more power than it needed. So I just needed someone to say, hey, I understand you have a lot going on, but you have all of these things that you can be doing, right? So I just need a kick in the butt. And it's so powerful when you have someone on your side, and they're not there to belittle you. They're not there to poke fun at you. They're there to help you. And I just needed a reminder that I could do it. And then so I started to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just started to, do all this stuff for my mind to become more even clearer. And I would just focus on, all right, here we go. Boom. Got the energy. And then at 7 o'clock, my day was already good. Like I felt like I did everything I needed to do that whole entire day. But then it just kept on compounding. By 11, I did everything else. And it's just like, whoa, I had all this free time. And I even created more time in the evenings for me to go home after I was done with my day and to sit down with a good book. And I was like, whoa, like this feels nice. And it was just because I got a little bit of help to organize myself, because I understand life can be chaotic. It could be hectic at any junction because something could have happened in your life, a trauma, a hardship. And when those things happen, it could be difficult to prioritize. It could be difficult to kind of siphon out what needs to be done because maybe your personal like your personal feelings are going to be there. Like, oh, I'm grieving. Oh, I'm sulking. I lost my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whatever. I lost my job. I mean, we can have a pity party for the rest of our lives, or we can say, okay, this was a moment. Let me get up and let me take action. I think one of the things being productive is understanding what wasn't productive and then changing it. So we can do the work today to say, hey, I'm not being productive in this area. I'm not being productive in this area, in work or family or my relationship. And you can say, I'm going to make some changes. But then again, how many people do? And so it's this aspect of investing, skin in the game, they call it. So when you get someone to say, hey, I'm investing in you because I want to invest in myself. I remember someone came to me, they wanted me to be their accountability partner. And this is well after the business has been started and structured. And I said, not a problem, right? We were good friends. So I said, I could be your accountability partner. And basically we said, what do we want to do every single week? And basically we gave ourselves tasks, and I did the tasks every single week, no problem. But after it's like the third or fourth week, they started to fall off. And I'm like, what happened? And they came with all these excuses. And I said, the reason why you're having these issues is because you didn't put any skin in the game. I don't want your money, but you are a person that needs to invest in yourself to some degree. Time is not enough for you. So you do have to get a coach. You do have to do things. And very similar to what you said, courses, they go in your mailbox and they sit there. She was a big course girl. And those courses, as effective as they are for some people, were no longer effective for her. So you have to find what is your cup of tea, what works for you. one of the reasons why I love having coaches like yourself come on is because you can be someone's cup of tea. You can be someone's breakthrough. And I think it's important that people realize that in this life, you don't have to do everything by yourself. Right now, you could have a lot of things mismatched, or you could have a lot of things chaotic in your life, and you just need a little bit of focus. You just need a little bit of discipline. So, Cindy, as we begin to wrap up, I would love for you to give us some final words, some final thoughts. And then, of course, please tell people how they can find you, reach out to you, and then learn more about what you're doing.
And you said some really good things there. So I hope your listeners were paying attention. I had someone recently tell me, I've been through other ADHD coaching programs and they gave some good tips, but they never really got to the root of why I was resisting doing what I thought I should do. And that's kind of what you said, that people get these courses and we're sort of information junkies. We click an ad and it promises the world. And so we sign up for it. But people don't need just information. There's a lot of free information out there. But when they join my coaching program, one of the things that we do is really dig into that emotional resistance, those invisible barriers that we have. And I think that's important to do with somebody else. Is this really difficult to do by yourself? And so anyway, I would love to connect with your audience. I'll give you some links you can put in your show notes. I wrote a book and I'll give away a free resource pack that people can use with that book. If they want to follow me on Instagram, it's CBC_Cindy Baker Coaching. Evidently, there are a lot of Cindy Bakers in the world, but very common name. But it's CBC_Cindy Baker Coaching. My website is cindybakercoaching.com. I'm also a speaker. And so if any of your listeners have an event coming up where they need a speaker, funny and motivational, would love to help them out. And I do have a coaching program. So if anybody wants to reach out, they can DM me on Instagram and I'll give them some more information.
Perfect. And I'm going to make it easy for everyone. All the links will be right down below, so you can easily reach out to Cindy. And rightfully so, there's also a lot of Michael Reardens in the world. It's kind of weird because Rearden is one of those names you might not think of, like that's like a very common name, but they spell the last name a little bit different. They spell it with O-N. So everyone spells my name O-N instead of E-N, which is not a big deal to me, but it is a deal I pay attention to sometimes. But other than that, I love what you said about stop giving away your dreams and your goals. And it is so important that we do that immediately. We stop giving away the best parts of our life, because one day, and you said it, we're not going to live forever. We don't want to be at the end of the road and say, like, oh man, I wish I did this, or I should have done this more. Today could be that day. Today could be that moment you say, all right, I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to be focused. I'm going to find the energy to do what I have to do, the things that only I can do.
That's right. Nobody at the end of their life said, I'm really glad I finished that Netflix series.
And I don't think it's going to be something that's ever going to trend, because it's going to be the things that we are looking for the most impact. And watching a show is nice every now and again, but in life, learn how to create the impact that's going to change not only your life, but the people around you as well. Create the ripple effect that is not only going to make you productive, but it's also going to help you be profitable and passionate about every bit of your life moving forward. So I do want to thank you, Cindy, for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work today.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.